Welcome back everyone, it's Mags, and previously I reviewed a little horror game made by Nipponichi Software, guess that NIS, called Yomawari Night Alone. It has a lovely little art style that they then use to present the most fucked up shit imaginable. It's an incredible game that gets its tense atmosphere just right, dumping you into a quiet town in the dead of night looking for a little girl's missing family with her only company being terrifying spirits that you can't even see without the dim comfort of your flashlight. Each chapter takes you on a little adventure where you explore a different part of town and deal with unique spirits. It was made by a team headed by Yu Mizukami, and became somewhat of a cult classic, breaking the bounds of the normal crowd interested in NIS by quite a bit, and I can definitely see why. If you like horror and haven't played it, definitely do so. It's short and sweet and maybe made me cry. And yes, they made more of them. This is actually a trilogy, with yet a new game on the horizon that has much of the same team working on it, and a very similar art style. Not quite a Yomawari 4, at least not as far as we know right now, but it's at least connected in a more meta sense, which is really neat. I'm looking forward to what it ends up being. We do know that it's a farming sim, so definitely different. Yomawari Midnight Shadows is the sequel to Night Alone, and is what we will be talking about today. Released 2 years afterwards for the PS Vita, PS4, and PC, the last of which I played it on. It follows a new girl, plural, in a new town with a new story. A forewarning, I can't talk about a lot of the extra content without at the very least implying some pretty heavy spoilers. At least what I consider to be heavy spoilers. It won't be about the main plot itself, so rest assured about that. I just think a significant part of the game is really cool to see for yourself, so there will be a point where I'll allow myself to start freely talking about all of that, and I'll signify it when I get there. The story for this one has a lot more setup than Night Alone, and that's because it has a lot more going on in general. If you know anything about Night Alone, it's probably the dog. Midnight Shadows has a similarly shocking opening sequence. In fact, I'm not even going to show or describe what actually happens because it's clearly supposed to be a surprise, and also because it's somehow even more morbid than Poro. But if you have high sensitivity to themes of depression or suicide, this is not the game for you, I'll leave it at that. It's just as grim, if not more so, as its predecessor. Opening the game, before you even see the characters, you get the exposition from this little diary entry that this girl's name is Yui. You know the story is serious when they actually name the characters this time. It also says her dog died yesterday. The series just has it out for dogs, man. But hey, at least she has another. You see Yui burying her deceased dog with her other dog, Chaco, beside her. I have to respect this game right out the gate for trolling the hell out of players who have played Night Alone. It goes out of its way to take advantage of those who think they know what to expect, before punching them in the gut anyway. Just like that game, this sequence with the girl and her dog functions as the tutorial. A tutorial with a noticeably bland font. It's here where Night Alone players will feel a terrifying sense of familiarity. Walk, run, tiptoe, pick up an object. Ah, a pebble. I'm not doing it, you're not making me throw that pebble. I will leave this game on this exact screen until the heat death of the universe, I swear to God. You throw the pebble, and the game teases the hell out of you. But in the end, the dog is safe. Thank God, 10 out of 10 game, you can all leave. But it is still stranded on the other side of this cliff. Yui walks the other way and you get more tutorial. It introduces a new mechanic that wasn't in Night Alone, where you can hold an object and move to push or pull it. You move a box forward so you can run on top of it to get over this gap. Later, you're introduced to the concept of picking up certain objects to move them around. After this section, a flashback. Now you see a new girl, Haru. Haru and Yui are best friends. She picks Yui up from her house to see a fireworks show together. Not only are the characters named, but they're having a full-blown conversation with words? And in color-coded dialogue boxes that correspond to the color of their ribbons. That's adorable. Haru, the blue one, laments having to move away soon, but is determined to stay because she doesn't want to leave Yui, the red one. They're both sad about it, but they continue to watch the fireworks together. On their way back though, they run into some freaky-ass spirits and get separated. Now you play as Haru trying to find Yui, just like the girl from Night Alone was trying to find her sister. I make that comparison because, well, that is the ultimate goal of both games. You do not find Yui right away. Yui has now gone missing and Haru desperately wants to find her. That is Midnight Shadows. They do the old bait and switch on ya. Haru is the real main character in this story. I'll be honest, the sheer fact that there's dialogue now already makes it feel like there's so much more going on. I mean, the first one had dialogue too. The girl spoke, but it wasn't that much, just some little thoughts here and there. What made the atmosphere of Night Alone so good is that it was minimalistic. It hardly gave you anything further than what you immediately needed to know, and let your mind fill in the gaps. Making a more character-driven and dialogue-heavy story could have still worked. I think they had an interesting idea, but I don't think Midnight Shadows pulled it off as well as I would have liked, unfortunately. See, between chapters, you actually get a short little gameplay segment where you play as Yui. So the game becomes more like they're trying to find each other. It's cool that there's still this kind of dual narrative going on, and you even retread areas as Haru that Yui was in previously to make it seem like you're hot on her trail. But it makes the whole thing just feel more like a normal mystery story and less of a horror story. That really shocking event in the intro cutscene that I absolutely skipped over does still stick in your mind and adds the extra mystery of why did that happen, and it's like you're trying to piece it together with what you're currently seeing in the story, which is pretty cool, but it wasn't really enough for me to hit the same notes as Night Alone did. I remember having that distinct feeling in Night Alone of wondering if the sister was okay, and dreading what the girl would actually end up finding in the end. I never felt anything like that in this game. I'll at least say that the whole thing is flipped on its head midway through, and I think it picks up quite nicely. And I do respect this game for trying something different, but I just wasn't as emotionally invested in it. Some of that also has to do with the level design. The chapters in this game are more linear in structure. Night Alone had you wandering around a lot looking for things. Like you'd suddenly come across a locked door, so shit, guess I better find the key somewhere. Some chapters were even more ambiguous on where to go in general, relying more on context clues to point you in the right direction, rather than giving you a straightforward path. Midnight Shadows is the exact opposite. You're basically spoon-fed the path ahead. You hardly ever have to wander around looking for anything. That's something I never really appreciated about Night Alone until it wasn't there anymore. In that game, it made you just that much more unsure of yourself, and made you focus more on what you're doing. With Midnight Shadows, you're mostly just walking in a straight line while stuff happens, and it takes away from the atmosphere in a more subtle way. I also noticed there's a much higher volume of boss-like encounters, which is fine. They're cool, but in conjunction with the more brain-off structure of the game, it kind of comes off like they were just trying to make a game more generic to appeal to more people, instead of embracing what makes Yomawari actually work. All in all though, that's a nitpick. That's not to say this game doesn't work at all. At its heart, it's still Yomawari, alright. I kind of have to be a bit nitpicky, because these games are so similar in their structure and atmosphere. They have the same exact core gameplay and exploration elements, and they're still as good as ever here. You're still walking around this big town in the dark in nearly complete silence, except for the slight hum of background noise, and the ambient sound of footsteps and whatever other droning noises the surroundings are making. Your heart still pounds when there's something nearby, which is a lot of the time, and you can only see most of those somethings with your flashlight. Although they actually use a different, less realistic heartbeat noise in this game for some reason, so it doesn't actually have that same amount of edge to it, unfortunately. Again, kind of a nitpick. And of course, you get an entire new town to explore, and entirely new spirits to make your skin crawl, including, but not limited to, a white guy, big fucking thing, Gash's face, and the Yoinky Spoinky. Nearly every single spirit is brand new, which is awesome. It really feels like a fresh new setting, but with a familiar atmosphere and gameplay. Just like Night Alone, you have a stamina meter that gets used up when you run. You can also tiptoe to go slower and fill it back up more quickly. You run faster when you have more stamina left, and slower when it reaches less than half. The new mechanics of sliding obstacles around and picking things up are a nice addition. They had a little flourish of interactivity, like this one boss fight where you have to avoid the spirit while moving trash off the shrine paths. The one other new addition to the gameplay is the introduction of charms. Throughout the game, you get some charms that you can equip in the house to give you passive effects, like being able to run for longer or hold more pebbles. It's ultimately pretty inconsequential, as most effects are hardly noticeable and you can play the game just fine without any of them, but you know, they're there. I also have to laugh at how niche some of their use cases are, like this one lets you carry more salts, which is an item that I can count on one hand the amount of times I've actually used across both games collectively. Oh, but this one lets you sometimes run faster. I don't think I ever actually noticed myself running faster, so it's really not much of a difference, and it's only sometimes. RNG. Thanks. Usable items still play a big role, and the game seems to encourage using them more than in Night Alone, by creating more use cases for them, mainly by having more enemies that you can only deal with by distracting them. Pebbles are still one of the most common usables, and they do the same thing as in Night Alone. You can throw them near enemies to distract them, but there are also some new usable items that also do that. For example, the paper airplane. This one's actually cool because it's a more ranged version of the pebble. They're a little rarer, and you can only hold 5 of them at a time as opposed to the 10 pebbles you can carry. But then there are fireflies, rarer still, and you can only hold 3 at a time. These also distract enemies. I just don't really see why you would need so many items that do the exact same thing. I tried looking up the fireflies to see if there is a specific use case that I could have easily missed by not experimenting with them enough, and not only is there basically no talk online that I could find, but hilariously, they are the only usable item in Yomawari 2 that doesn't have a wiki page on the Yomawari fandom wiki. So maybe they really are just that useless and unnotable. You can also still hide from spirits in designated spots around the map, like behind bushes and signposts. I don't think they're as useless in this game as in Night Alone, given the nature of the different spirits in this one. There are more that'll chase you down relentlessly when they see you, but this game also uses hiding spots in really interesting ways in scripted events throughout the story. Multiple times, Haru will hide from whatever boss or big spirit she's running from, and it creates a lot of suspense in those moments. There's also this cool optional event for a collectible that utilizes it really well. Their existence is definitely more justified in this one. Another usable item new to this game is a trash bag. You can only carry one at a time, but it lets you hide anywhere on demand, which is a super cool addition, and makes hiding a little more versatile. They even slightly changed the interaction UI, so that a star appears above Haru's head, specifically for objects on the ground that she can pick up. Everything else is still an exclamation point. So you can immediately distinguish an item from just a hiding place, which is a very welcome change. Coins are still prominent and still your currency for saving at Jizo statues, but unlike Night Alone, Jizo statue saves are real saves in Midnight Shadows. No more quick saving. You're free to close the game whenever you'd like, and you'll start right at your last Jizo statue save. Usable items still respawn when you die so you can farm them. As you may have noticed, there are a lot more usables in this game compared to the last game, and there's still 2 more that we haven't talked about, but I'll save those for later. Speaking of the Jizo statues, you can still thankfully fast travel between any statue you've saved at, but even so, a big criticism I have towards this game is how inconvenient traveling around is. See, in Night Alone, every single location was A, outside, and B, all in the same town. So everywhere you went meant you were physically covering ground on the map. In Midnight Shadows, there are a lot of what I call internal areas, which are areas you go inside of and aren't technically part of the map. The empty house, for example, is just one building on the map, but you can go inside and it's an entire area you can explore and where a whole chapter of the game takes place. There are places you can save at inside of these places, but they're not actually part of the main map, which means that if you want to go back to them later, you have to warp to the nearest Jizo statue outside of them, walk to the entrance, then walk all the way to where you want to go from the entrance. There is no fast traveling into these areas, or even between the save points inside of them. They don't have their own maps, so you can forget about fast traveling out of internal areas too. You're hoofing it back to the exit the old-fashioned way. What's even more inconvenient is that there's actually more than one town in this game. You'll probably notice early on that there's a route to a nearby town marked on the map, but you can only fast travel between statues in the town you're already in for some bizarre reason, unless I just really missed something. So you have to warp back to the nearest statue to that road, and then manually walk across that road between towns every single time you want to cross over. It's a major pain when you're hunting for collectibles and frequently need to go back and forth between towns or deep into those internal areas. On top of all of this, you cannot warp back home anytime you want anymore, which is something that Night Alone let you do. It was really nice in that game because it gave you a guaranteed fast travel option anytime you wanted. You could simply warp back home, then walk to the Jizo statue you knew was right next to it. In Midnight Shadows, there's also a Jizo statue next to Haru's home, but since you can't warp back home on demand, you can't use it anytime you want. If you want to go somewhere different, you have to manually find the nearest Jizo statue. It feels even more bizarre when you consider that they literally introduce a mechanic that you can only change out at home with the charms. So even just changing out your charm feels like a major drag, and it's just not even worth it. Absolutely forget it if you're in the next town over. It's now that I want to get into aspects of the extra content that I would consider spoilers and wouldn't recommend anyone who wants to play the game blindly for themselves to know. So I'm gonna start talking more freely about the other contents of the game now. In Chapter 6, who does Haru encounter? None other than Mr. Title Drop himself. Anyone who played Night Alone, or watched my video on it, might be able to guess what happens next. She is then dropped into the classic Yomawari special, The Factory. The same exact area where Mr. Yomawari would take you in Night Alone. And in the same fashion, you then need to escape. And then keep going. And going. And you realize you can just be in the town from Night Alone. That is what the nearby town is on the map. The second town you can explore in this game, it's the first town. You're blocked off for most of it until post-game, and even then, not all of it is explorable at all. The school area, for example, is totally inaccessible, but a huge chunk of the town still is. I just about lost my mind the second I saw Mr. Yomawari, and it kept escalating from there as I explored most of the town. It's incredible, and that's why it was so important that all the spirits in the new town are different, because the spirits you find in the Night Alone town are the spirits from Night Alone, the exact same town with the exact same spirits. Okay, not all the exact same, and they're in different places than they were in Night Alone, but for the most part. It just adds to that wave of familiarity all of a sudden, after seeing completely different spirits for all the rest of the game. It still has nothing to do with the actual story, by the way. You escape back to your own town and continue with the rest of the game, and never have to go back there again, except for optional stuff. Stuff which includes encounters with the Night Alone protagonist. She is in this game. You can encounter her in 5 different locations, which must be in a certain order, and you may have to exit and re-enter the town for her to appear in the next place. She and Haru exchange, like, actual dialogue, which is still crazy to see for some reason, especially from the Night Alone girl. She mostly just talks about what happened during the first game in the locations you see her in, what her life is like now, and how she can tell Haru's gone through something awful. And by the end of it, they're certified friends TM. Oh, and you also get a charm for it. Post-game works in the same way as in Night Alone. After the main story, you're totally free to stay in the towns, and explore to your heart's content. And oh boy, is there a lot to explore between the two towns. I had a lot of fun just going off and exploring the bits of the maps I hadn't been to yet during the story. There are a ton of collectibles to get, and they're all scattered across both maps. As a side note, holy hell this menu is a flashbang compared to the rest of the game. A simple screen recording does not do this thing justice, I promise you. It is searing bright white compared to the very dark and dreary rest of the game. It's like I'm staring into the fucking sun every time I open this thing. As for the usables, I mentioned there is still some more I had yet to talk about, and that's because they can only be gotten in the Night Alone town, and they're both incredible references to that game. If you throw a coin into the Centipede Shrine in the downtown area, you'll be given a handful of salt to use, and the last usable is the doll. Also in the downtown area, you can encounter the same ghost kid as in Night Alone, and chasing them down in the same manner will again net you the doll. Of course, if you lose it, another one will appear in your room next time you're there, just like good old times. Key items, interestingly, are not only tied to the story in this one. There's some key items scattered around that you don't need for the story at all, but rather open some optional doors or are used for optional events, which I thought was really neat. It just makes exploring even more exciting knowing things like that can happen. For the collectibles category itself, there are a whopping 116 items here. The first items are all your charms, which are not all tied to the story either. There are optional ones that you have to do some pretty convoluted things to get. Just like in Night Alone, there are also puzzle pieces and parts, 2 groups of collectibles that give you another one when all of them are obtained. The puzzle is really cool because completing it has a visible effect on the game. It fills out all the extra little visuals on the map like all the scribbles. Seeing a Prinny on the Yomawari map might be the best collection reward of all time. The parts are kind of convoluted because once you get all 5, you have to go back to where part 1 was, to this mysterious crater looking thing, and an event will happen there once all 5 parts are gotten that will give you a different collectible altogether, the mysterious pebble. And only then will the reward for collecting all the parts appear back at Haru's house. Then you can go into the Night Alone girl's house for yet another collectible. The collectibles in this game are even more interesting to get than its predecessor because they go harder into littering a bunch of special unique events around the map, like that aforementioned hiding spot in the rice fields, or this spot on the mountain where you'll get shit your pants jump scared and immediately die just for trying to go up this pathway. You need to stay totally still while you hear the bell ringing and while the footsteps are visible. Make it to the end safely for a collectible. It's things like this that you'll run into constantly when wandering around in post-game, and it's really neat. They just went crazy trying to cram in as much weird shit as they could, and I am all here for it. You actually get hints on how to find and or deal with some of these through notes you can pick up. Like one mysterious note mentions that when you hear the bell ringing, stand still, referring to the mountain event. Or try giving money to the vending machine at the end of the street, which refers to an event where if you give this vending machine 5 coins, you'll be transported to an alternate dimension. You still definitely need a guide for all the collectibles. The achievements, much like Night Alone, don't have too much to them, it's mostly just finding all the collectibles. A few you'll get automatically since they pertain to specific collectibles. And there's still a lot of the same do mundane thing many times achievements, like kicking cans, and a golden achievement, which was a golden trophy on PlayStation, for dying 80 times, which I don't know why, I just find really funny. Mostly the fact that it's a golden trophy. You need to defeat 5 mist apparitions, which are these cloud things that you just kinda have to wait around 4 to disappear, and that counts as killing them, I guess. You have to pet 10 cats, because yes, not only can you still feed cats, you can also pet them. Normally they run away from you and also disappear, so they're actually ghost cats, but feeding them will make them trust you, and you can then interact with them, and they make the cutest cat sounds ever put into anything ever. "10 out of 10, absolute cinema, no notes." You have to encounter the Ghost Crow. What the hell is the Ghost Crow? Holy! Yomawari Midnight Shadows. I really respect that they tried for a more complex story, at least in comparison, and I do think it was good. Midnight Shadows is a solid game. I just didn't enjoy it as a horror game as much as I did Night Alone. Many of the elements that made that one unsettling and added to its atmosphere is kind of just gone from Midnight Shadows. But it still has the same DNA and is still a great experience on its own. And I would actually say that Midnight Shadows does the non-story stuff better than Night Alone when it comes to the exploration and hunting collectibles. Those things were more enjoyable in this game for me, just very bogged down by the pain in the ass fast travel system. I'm really looking forward to what the third, and as of now final game, Lost in the Dark, has to offer. So if you want to see me cover that, as well as other NIS games, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. I've been Mags, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.